Chirac and Moroccan King Mohammed-VI. They spoke at a ceremony last month in Paris, commemorating the life of King Mohammed's grandfather, the late King Mohammed-V.
Mr. Jacques Chirac, President of the Republic, will now give a speech.
Sire,
Your Majesty,
Altesse,
Your Highness,
Mesdames et Messieurs les ambassadeurs,
Ambassadors,
Monsieur le maire
Mr.
de Paris,
Mayor of Paris,
Mesdames et Messieurs,
ladies and gentlemen.
les amitiés entre nations
Friendships
se forgent
between
dans le
nations
creuset de
are
l'histoire
forged
commune.
in the melting pot of their common
Elles se
history.
nourrissent de visions,
They are nourished
idéaux
by
communs,
vision, common
de
ideals,
sacrifices partagés.
and shared sacrifices.
Elles mûrissent au gré
They
de
mature
souvenirs,
in the
d'ombres,
flow of memories,
de lumière,
shadows,
de
light,
combats menés
and
côte à
battles
côte,
fought side by
et
side
parfois.
and sometimes
contre les
against one another.
Ces amitiés doivent
These
aussi
friendships also
beaucoup
owe much
aux hommes
to
d'exception
outstanding
qui les
people
ont marqués,
who marked them,
qui les ont
who
vécus,
lived them,
qui les ont rêvés.
and who dreamed them.
Sire,
Your
le
Majesty,
Maroc et la France
Morocco and France
sont redevables à
are
votre
indebted to your grandfather,
Sa Majesté
His
le roi
Majesty
Mohammed
Mohammed V,
de la relation
for the
si
remarkable
singulière
relationship that unites them.
Sa stature a
His stature
marqué d'une forte
Has left a
empreinte
strong imprint
d'histoire
on
contemporaine.
contemporary history.
Sa modération
His moderation
et son humilité
and his humbleness
l'ont inspiré dans la
inspired his decision to
soutenir la
support
France
France
au temps de l'adversité.
in times of adversity.
Sa loi, sa foi
His law,
et son
his
courage
faithfulness, and his
lui ont
courage
permis de l'affronter
enabled him
dans
to
de
face
la
adversity
puissance.
just as much as his power did.
Mohammed V aura porté
Mohammed
très
V
haut
lifted high the honor
et la fierté du
and
Maroc.
pride of Morocco.
Aujourd'hui,
Today,
devant votre Majesté
before Your
et
Majesty
sa famille
and his family
assemblée,
gathered here,
la France
France
et Paris
and Paris
rendent l'hommage
pay
de
tribute
l'estime
to
de l'amitié
and express
à cette
respect
haute
and,
figure
and friendship
et à travers
for this
elle,
great leader,
au
and through
royaume du
him
Maroc
to the Kingdom of
et à
Morocco
son peuple.
and its people.
La vie de votre grand-père
The life of your grandfather,
se
Your Majesty,
confond avec, l'avènement
flows
des
together
Maroc
with
au rang des
Morocco's
grandes
accession to the ranks of great nations,
nations. Long chemin.
a long path that was filled with trials.
Lorsque le sultan Sidi
When
Mohammed
Sultan Sidi
succède à
Mohammed
Moulay Youssef,
succeeded Mullah Youssef,
le protectorat a 15
the
ans
protectorate was 15 years
et
old,
le nouveau monarque
and the
en
new
a 18.
monarch was 18 years old.
Le maréchal Lyoté a quitté
Marshal
le Maroc
Lyoto had
depuis
left
2 ans.
Morocco 2 years prior to
Si
that.
son ombre ne s'étend plus
And although his
sur ce
shadow
pays qu'il a tant
no longer
aimé,
fell over this country that he loved so much,
le dialogue
the dialogue that he had patiently wove
entre
between
le palais
the palace
et les autorités
and the French
françaises
authorities
va s'interrompre.
was interrupted.
C'est à ce moment-là
It was then that the premises of the crisis began to manifest themselves at the same time as the beginnings of the nationalist movement, a movement that was faithful, Your Majesty, to your ancestral traditions. The young sultan was learning his first lessons in being a monarch, similar to the virtues acquired more from contact with simple people than from a notable collapsed empire. Endowed with remarkable piety,
il ne tarde pas.
He was quick to assert his personality.
Elle est faite
His personality was made of dignity,
d'intelligence,
intelligence, and lucidity.
La spiritualité
Spirituality
et le
and
patriotisme sont au
patriotism
cœur de son être.
were at the heart of his very being.
Foi sera son
His
soutien
faith was his
et
source
son
of support
inspiration en tout
and
temps
his inspiration at
et en
all
tout
times
lieu,
and in all
et
places,
surtout au moment de
and
l'exil.
especially during his time in
C'est
exile.
au nom de toutes ces valeurs et
It
de
was
sa
in the name of
conscience
all his
aiguë des
values
fondements de
and
la
his
BIA
keen awareness of the
qu'il
foundation of the
refusera
BIA
plus tard
that he later refused the shame of the Vichy regime anti-Semitic laws
à la
by
protection
personally
de ses
guaranteeing
sujets
the
juifs
protection of his Jewish
contre toute
subjects
dérive totalitaire.
against any drift towards totalitarianism.
Dès les premières années
As
de
of the
son
first
règne,
years of his reign,
Sidi Mohammed
Sidi
sera
Mohammed
le défenseur
was the
inflexible
unbending
des
defender
intérêts suprêmes du
of the
royaume
supreme
et de
interests
ses
of the
alliés.
kingdom and its allies.
Ce fut le cas lors de la
This was the
signature
case
le 16
on
mai 1930
May 16, 1930, during the signing of the famous Daïr Berber, which subjected the tribes to customary law and removed them from the legal system in place.
de ce jour.
From that day forward, Sidi Mohammed identified himself with the cause of Moroccan, Arab, and Maghreb nationalism,
Il le dira lui-même,
resolved, as he himself said, to no longer cede any of the rights of his homeland.
de ce jour,
On that day,
une longue et subtile
a
confrontation
long and subtle confrontation was launched, which brought an end to the protectorate.
conclura par l'indépendance
It
du
ended
Maroc,
with Morocco gaining its
sans
independence
inimitié.
without feelings of unfriendliness, bitterness, or overconfidence.
Pendant toute cette période,
During this whole time,
Sidi Mohammed
Sidi
sut
Mohammed
mener son
was
combat
able to
pour le
lead
Maroc,
his fight for
tout en
Morocco
gardant vivante l'image
while
d'une
also
France
keeping
humaniste,
alive the image of
modernisatrice,
France as being humanistic, modernistic, and a leader in progress, a France that he never reduced to the erring ways of its colonial policy.
Sans doute pressentait-il
Undoubtedly,
déjà d'autres
he was
élans,
also feeling at that time
d'autres ambitions
another
pour nos deux
momentum,
pays.
other ambitions for our two
Celles de
countries,
relations fondées sur
an
la
ambition
confiance
based on relations
et l'amitié
through
entre
cooperation,
deux États souverains.
respect, and friendship between two sovereign
Rien
nations.
n'illustre mieux cette ambivalence.
Nothing
La
better
rencontre en
illustrates this
1953
ambivalence than the meeting in
entre le futur
1953
Mohammed-V
between the future
et le général
Mohammed
de
V and General de Gaulle.
Les deux hommes se sont naturellement
Naturally, the two men recognized
Apprécié.
and appreciated each
Et
other,
leur dialogue
and their
s'est d'emblée
dialogue
établi
focused
sur
on the
l'essentiel,
essential issue
l'avenir de
from
la
the
France
very
et du Maroc.
outset, that is, the
L'un
future of
comme
France and
l'autre
Morocco.
sont démunis,
Both men
et
were powerless
déterminés.
but determined.
Ils cherchent les appuis nécessaires
They sought
pour
the
mener à
necessary
bien le
support
combat qui
to
les
successfully
transcende,
conclude the battle
l'honneur,
that transcended them,
dignité de leur
honor and the dignity of their homeland.
nous, des mémoires du chef de la France
We remember
libre,
the memory of the leader of Free France who made contact with Sultan Sidi Mohammed Ben Youssef. This young, proud, personal king did not hide his ambition to be his country's leader in its march towards progress and towards independence one day. But the time had not yet come. The general reminded the Sultan of this, who agreed on January 11, 1944, to publicly renounce the Independence Manifesto. A long-standing disagreement could have followed, but this was not the case. On June 18, 1945, the only head of state to be invited by liberated Paris, Mohammed V, was named a resistance fighter. It was an intense moment in the bonds of friendship. General de Gaulle had just recognized, and rightly so, the noblesse and the loyalty of your grandfather. But for Sidi Mohammed, how could one not become more committed to the path of liberty when we were already entering the order of liberation? According to the king, the honors could not replace the full restoration of his status. The hope stirred up in Morocco by the promises of change made to the Sultan vanished with the departure of General de Gaulle. The pressure of interests, the weakness of our institutions, the advocates of reform of the French policy in the Maghreb clashed with the defenders of the status quo, who were opposed to the Moroccan nationalists rallied behind their sultan. As for Mohammed-V, he neither could nor wanted to wait. He gave a speech in Tanger on April 17, 1947, in which he deliberately failed to pay tribute to France. This was enough for the silent opposition, which characterized the relations between the French and the Moroccan authorities, to turn into open hostility. Under the pressure of the resident generals, the Sultan submitted but did not give in. At the time, he felt, and I quote, that the wisest solution to the Moroccan problem lied in a new definition of French-Moroccan relations that would guarantee Morocco's sovereignty and protect France's legitimate interests in the context of productive cooperation. This option became a sort of theme song, especially in the King's speech on November 18, 1952. The crisis could only grow worse. All means were fair game in the attempt to force an abdication that never came about. On August 20th, 1953, a divided and misguided French government allowed the legitimate king of a friendly nation to be deposed. Many voices protested this show of force, among which that of a minister who was none other than my predecessor, President François Mitterrand. In Madagascar, the place of exile shared with the members of the royal family present today, your grandfather acquired an immense stature, both moral and political. Though he was far from home, he was present in the hearts of every Moroccan, and he became the symbol of the nation. The French authorities did not delay in sizing up the political and human damage caused by a guilty passiveness and a disastrous reign of terror. The context thus created made the return of the Sultan unavoidable. It was in Saint-Cloud that Mohammed-V, Edgar Faure, and Alain Pinet brought an end to the crisis in the well-understood interests of our two nations. On March 2, 1956, the Protectorate page was turned, and Morocco regained full control of its destiny. King Mohammed V, the spiritual leader of the Moroccan nation, who had also become its undisputed political leader, called upon his people in his first speech to close the page of small sacrifices for independence and to open the page of great sacrifice for the economic and social development of the kingdom. His rejection of violence, sense of honor, it was through his characteristics that his personality marked the new relationship with France. Your Majesty, what a great man your grandfather was. What an unflinching will in the face of the contrary winds of history. What an audacious and modern vision this king who was so faithful to tradition had. Attentive to the most destitute, aware of the fact that progress and development cannot be separated from justice, concerned with unity in the Maghreb and the Arab world, and a defender of the aspirations of the Third World, a fervent supporter of dialogue among the cultures, an enemy of fundamentalism and sectarianism that is so contrary to true spirituality. This beautiful ethical, moral, and political heritage was fully bequeathed to his son and traveling companion, Moulay Hassan, who became His Majesty King Hassan II. Hassan II, another great king, if ever there was one. A king whom I had the privilege to know well, and for whom I felt great respect, regard, admiration, gratitude, and affection. This legacy allowed Morocco to make its well-defined choice of democratization and to strengthen the social dimension of its economic action. The elections, which were organized last September, and the political platform drawn up by the new government under your auspices have, Your Majesty, been a dazzling illustration. France will stand by your side to consolidate this work, which is based on our common values. The many meetings scheduled in 2003 between our two countries will allow us to define the new framework of our relations, which will take into account the progress that the European Union just made in Copenhagen. The needs of Morocco in terms of development in the context of partnership agreements, and the need to prefigure the relationship model that should govern future relations between the two shores of the Mediterranean Sea. It is with great pleasure that I will travel to Morocco next year in order to give concrete continuation to these orientations and to the value of our friendship, which I would qualify as fraternal. Your Majesty, when I met with your father on July 14th, 1999, after the Royal Guard had paraded down the Champs-Élysées, I know how proud and pleased he was in advance at the tribute that we are paying today to the great founding king, your grandfather. No other place better deserves to bear the name of Mohammed-V than this esplanade, which leads up to the Arab World Institute, an irreplaceable link between the East and the West, between France, Europe, and the Arab Muslim world, a magnificent bridge between yesterday and tomorrow that your grandfather would undoubtedly have loved. May this square that we are inaugurating today inspire young generations to understand that cultural differences are not meant to be a source of discord. They nourish our mutual understanding, and they show that religious or ethnic confrontations do not have to become destiny. Your Majesty, Morocco and France are currently experiencing a highlight of their common history. The city of Paris, and I warmly thank its mayor and elected officials for this, has called upon Mohammed-V to take his place among the foreign heads of state who mark our capital with their name. It is a new testimony to the exceptional link that unites us, a link that is based on shared values, the spirit of tolerance, openness towards others, social exactingness, and the democratic ideal. Your Majesty, Your Highness, Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you. His Majesty Mohammed-VI, King of Morocco, will now give a speech.
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala maulana rasulillah wa alihi wa sahbihi. Monsieur le Président de la République,
Mr. President of the Republic, Madam First Lady, Mr. Mayor of Paris, Your Excellencies, honorable elected officials, ladies and gentlemen. The Kingdom of Morocco and the French Republic have often been marked by exceptional relations in their contemporary history. Mr. President, you have just given an eloquent illustration of this, and you have provided a most convincing chronology. Along with you, I would also say that this exceptional relationship, which is also our source of pride, has been confirmed each time that people's liberties have been threatened or endangered on the battlefields of World War I, in the resistance to Nazi fascism, the threats of bombs, or closer to home, when we learned that in Bosnia or elsewhere we needed to protect people from oppression and discrimination. Mr. President, as I stand by your side this morning to inaugurate Place Mohammed-V in Paris, at the foot of Notre Dame, the Arab World Institute, and a few meters away from the Paris Mosque, I would like to base myself on these universal values, which are the building blocks of human rights, and refer to these battles for justice and dignity in order to associate them above all with the memory of my illustrious grandfather, His Majesty Mohammed-V, may he rest in peace. I would also like, on this solemn occasion, to evoke this moment of intense emotion that many French and Moroccan citizens still keep alive in their memory. I am referring to the memorable date of July 14th, 1999, when my august father, His Majesty King Hassan II, may he rest in peace, wanted Moroccan and French troops to parade before you to a mix of the Moroccan national anthem and the Marseillaise. None of us will ever forget the strength and the uniqueness of this symbol that was created and desired on both sides. These intense and privileged moments that we have shared make history and forge the memory and the destiny of great nations. This is why, ladies and gentlemen, you will agree with me that with respect to Morocco and France, I can, without beating around the bush, proudly claim the mark of exceptionalness for our two countries. This is a mark that incarnates an intellectual and human proximity, the continuity and depth of which illustrates the art of that which is possible and the art of the best, when all around us springs forth the poison of old fears and a world that is foreign to the cultural and spiritual space in which Moroccans and the French have chosen to build their fate together. Mr. President, General de Gaulle was not mistaken when, in 1945, he made my revered grandfather, His Majesty King Mohammed-V, along with Churchill and Eisenhower, one of the few foreign personalities to be a full-fledged member of the prestigious Order of the Resistance Fighters. Fair men among the fair, the two men had a rendezvous with history without ever having met each other. Indeed, starting on May 3, 1939, when the Nazis had just annexed Czechoslovakia, His Majesty King Mohammed-V received the Resident General and told him that all of Morocco stands by France, which is making every effort to ensure peace without neglecting the means to ensure its defense in the event that a conflict would disrupt its tranquility. The French can rest assured that in all circumstances they will find the Moroccans standing by their side. A few weeks later, on September 4th, 1939, in all mosques in the kingdom, the customary Friday worship was transformed into a call to general mobilization for liberty and against barbarianism. The royal message, read for the circumstances, said, "From this day forward, and until the standard of France and its allies is crowned with glory, we must provide them with our unreserved support. We will spare none of our resources, and we will not retreat from any sacrifice." Without any calculations or afterthoughts, tens of thousands of Moroccans spontaneously responded to this call. This was, Mr. President, more than a half a century ago, in the name of the values of humanism and the principles of law that we have always shared with the free world. Values upon which Morocco has continually developed itself and strengthened its plans for a democratic society and the authenticity of its modernity. It was based on these same principles that His Majesty King Mohammed-V showed his ethics to the rest of the world by refusing to apply the anti-Jewish and discriminatory laws of the Vichy regime to Jewish Moroccans. Through this noble gesture, Morocco became one of the rare host countries in the world that was open to all those who were persecuted by Nazi barbarianism. Ladies and gentlemen, this morning we pay tribute to a man who was for France, the free world, and for Morocco the Morocco of tolerance and modernity, a great humanitarian and statesman. The man who, when exiled by France in 1953, was able to show us the path of reason and wisdom by preserving the exceptional and unique nature of our relationship, no matter what the situation or the trials and tribulations of our common history. Mr. President, in inaugurating Place Mohammed-V in Paris, we are not only fulfilling a duty of memory. The liberator of the Moroccan nation, the pioneer of African independence movements, and the creator of a free, united, and democratic Morocco began a battle that, as we all know, is not yet over and has not yet been entirely won. The temptation to exclude, the temptation of religious and cultural ostracism, and the drift towards intolerance and extremism take up too much space on the international agenda with their bloody dramas and their attendant ignorance and preconceived notions. Moroccans know this full well. Moroccans who refuse the destiny of identity-based introversion and confrontation, and Moroccans who unanimously favor encounters with others. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, we can be, like Morocco, a nation proud of its united identity, with its multiple tributaries, deeply rooted in its Muslim faith, a country that has remained familiar to you, and that does not intend to give up any of its 1,000-year-old commitment to the culture of dialogue, to openness, and to sharing with others. It is this testimony that gives its true dimension, the topicality, and a true light to Place Mohammed-V in Paris. I could not conclude, Mr. President, without first thanking the city of Paris, its mayor, and its honorable elected officials for having allowed Morocco and France to enrich their common heritage with this square, which for many future generations to come will be the reference and the symbol of our relations, which we always want to be stronger and more exemplary in terms of their continuity. Thank you very much.
The late King Mohammed V led Morocco to independence from France in 1956. Join us next week for the return of Prime Minister's Questions, next Sunday night, 9 Eastern and Pacific, on C-SPAN.
Next on C-SPAN,